Our top story check today takes us to Puerto Rico, where the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, recently visited Puerto Rico. Now, during her visit, she recognized the impact that coastal erosion has had on the island and also highlighted the $1 million allocation being made to face climate change and strengthen the island's infrastructure. Our Francis Felix brings us the latest.
U.S. Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland announced the allocation of $15 million to Puerto Rico through the Inflation Reduction Act for technical assistance that will help identify ways to deal with climate change on the island. Haaland, who was visiting Puerto Rico, recognized the enormous impact of coastal erosion in various parts of the archipelago, including areas managed by the National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She also pointed out the multi-million-dollar allocation of funds for Puerto Rico through the President's Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which provides the island with access to nearly $2.5 billion over 5 years, starting in fiscal year 2022.
As of this summer, more than $184 million have been allocated to Puerto Rico for infrastructure resilience in 2022, including investments to bolster our resilience against the impacts of climate change and extreme weather events. Additionally, the Department of Interior announced a total of $15 million in funding for climate technical assistance made available under the Inflation Reduction Act to be shared among all the U.S. territories, including Puerto Rico.
Haaland and the Undersecretary for Insular and International Affairs, Puerto Rican Carmen Cantor, met with Governor Pedro Pierluisi and Commissioner Jennifer Gonzalez to discuss the mitigation projects underway. As part of the visit, they toured the San Felipe del Morro Castle, where they saw ongoing projects aimed at mitigating coastal erosion and weather impacts on the area's historic structures. Resident Commissioner highlighted the over $75 million obligated to Puerto Rico in recent years for projects under DOI jurisdiction. Gonzalez mentioned other projects underway, such as the restoration of Las Salinas in Cabo Rojo, for which $5 million was granted, more than $2 million for a coastal erosion project in the coastal area of Fortín San Juan de la Cruz, among other projects. Reporting from San Juan, Puerto Rico, Francis Felix.
All right, thanks so much, Francis. In the meantime, a 300-megawatt natural gas power plant is set to be built in Guyana, one that could result in residents having to pay half of what they would usually spend on their electric bill. President Irfaan Ali announced that one of the 5 entities that submitted bids to build the plant under the country's Gas-to-Shore project has been given the cabinet's nod. He said negotiations will start with the expectation that a contract will be executed before the end of the month.
The government of Guyana, via cabinet today, issued its no objection to the ranking of CH4 Linseka as the number 1 ranked group to build a 300-megawatt combined cycle power plant and natural gas liquids plant at Wales West Coast Demerara. Under an engineering procurement construction contract, Cabinet's no objection will now allow negotiations to proceed to conclude an EPC contract. Power China was ranked number 2 and may be engaged if negotiations fail to conclude a contract with Linseka by end of November.
Now, meantime, the 300-megawatt power plant and natural gas liquids plant will be owned by the government of Guyana. Exxon is expected to deliver the completed pipeline to the power plant by the last quarter of 2024 to achieve commissioning and testing of the plant by the end of the year. President Ali said the project is expected to deliver power at less than half of the current costs.
This is a significant movement forward in Guyana, not only achieving energy security, but us achieving an important benchmark, that is a reduction in our energy costs so that our manufacturing and industrial development and expansion can take place, and so that the ordinary families and the ordinary people can feel a substantive reduction in the cost of electricity in their pockets and in their household. Just for reference, a family at the end of this project that now pays 20,000 Guyana dollars per month in light bill or electricity costs will see that cost coming down to $10,000.
And switching gears now to the latest in some health news. The updated Moderna COVID vaccine booster used in the U.S. generates significantly higher protection against the two Omicron subvariants. Now that's compared to its earlier booster. The company says that conclusion comes from a study of more than 500 people across all age ranges. The group was vaccinated with an original series of shots, boosted with Moderna's original vaccine, then boosted months later with the bivalent version. Moderna says all people had a 15-fold increase in Omicron BA4 and BA5 antibody levels compared to pre-booster levels. The CDC says the BA5 strain makes up about 30% of all new COVID infections in the U.S. Now, earlier this month, Pfizer and BioNTech said study results showed its updated bivalent booster provided a substantially higher immune response. Well, now to the travel industry. Air carriers have refunded more than $600 million to hundreds of thousands of passengers for canceled or changed flights since the start of the pandemic. The Transportation Department announced that news on Monday, and it comes as federal regulators crack down on half a dozen airlines they say skirted rules which determine when refunds are issued. The department is also issuing $7.25 million in fines against the 6 airlines for extreme delays in providing refunds to passengers. That brings the total assessed fines for this year to $8.1 million, a record in civil penalties for the department's Consumer Protection Program. Most of the fines went to foreign-based airlines. Frontier was the only U.S. carrier to get fined in relation to refunds. Meanwhile, airlines are still struggling to keep up with a rapid rise in demand for air travel. Well, switching gears now, Attorney General William Tong announced that Connecticut, along with 39 other state attorney generals, have reached a $391.5 million settlement with Google over its location tracking practices. A 2018 AP article showed how Google records your movements even when you explicitly tell it not to. The article focused on 2 Google account settings: location history and web and app activity. While location history is off by default and must be enabled by a user, web and app activity, a separate account setting, is automatically on when users set up a Google account, including all Android phone users and most iPhone users. And 2 people escaped unharmed after a small plane they were in crashed in the Everglades in South Florida on Monday. Miami-Dade police officials say an aerial patrol spotted the plane around 1:30 p.m. just 10 miles west of Miami-Opa-locka Executive Airport. You can see the plane here completely flipped over in a grassy area not far from a dirt roadway just off of Northwest 42nd Avenue in Miami-Dade. Officials say the plane's 2 occupants weren't injured and were rescued from the scene. No other information was immediately known at the time.